All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's MarketingBitz webinar. Today's webinar is titled, What Makes a Great Website? And we brought to you by Erin Thompson of YP, the Real Yellow Pages, and our own Greg Sterling of the LSA. So before we get started with the presentation, I just have a few quick announcements. Next slide, please. First announcement, the webinar is going to be archived on our website, MarketingBitz.com. And, could you go back a slide, please, Erin? Sorry. I'll just keep going. So you can access the webinar by clicking on the webinars tab at the top, and then you'll see that the webinar is posted at the top of the page because they're all in chronological order. And for anyone asking a question in the question box about if you are going to receive a recording after the presentation, yes, you will. You're going to receive an email sometime tomorrow which has the recording in it, as well as a copy of the report that we're going to talk about later in the webinar. Let's see, and the site also features a variety of resources for you to learn about digital marketing, so feel free to look around. Another quick announcement, if you want to join in on today's conversation on Twitter, please use the hashtag BitzWebinar and tag us at MarketingBitz. And then on this slide, as you can see, our 2017 Bootcamp series is underway. So for those of you who don't know what Bootcamp is, our Bootcamps are one-day digital marketing intensives that we host across the country, where small businesses can learn the basics of digital marketing. YP will actually be there. They have a booth and they have a speaker. So some of our upcoming shows, if you happen to be in the Atlanta area, we have a show in Atlanta next Wednesday, 1 week from today. And then we have a show in Nashville on May 17th. You can get 50% off on the shows by using the code YPWEB when you register. And you can register at the link at the top of this slide at www.bitzbootcamp.com. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Greg to get started.
Okay, thanks, Becky. So the subject of this webinar is essentially how to create a great website, the elements of a really successful website. And it's kind of ironic because, you know, for years and years, I've been thinking that websites are less and less necessary. Other consumer destinations are gaining in importance, and websites are losing importance, but in fact the data shows something quite different, and it was a surprise to me. So let's go to the next slide and I'll set the stage for Erin's presentation. So as everybody knows, marketing for local businesses and national brands used to be a lot simpler in the old days with only a few channels. Next slide. We have today is a situation with a lot more screens, a lot more channels, social media, search, ratings and review sites, and so on and so on. And all of this is now cross-platform. So it creates a lot of complexity, whether you're a Fortune 500 brand or a single location business. Next slide. And reaching customers, of course, is a much more challenging proposition now. So next slide, please. So LSA research shows that in 2013, local business owners were using an average of 6 different media types or channels, including traditional media, to reach their customers. And in 2016, that's gone up to almost 8. And it's probably reflective of the reality that the people on this call are experiencing as well. So more complexity, more channels. Next slide, please. Now, given all the digital media avenues to reach people, and given the rise of e-commerce, you know, a lot of people sort of assume, and there's been a negative retail headlines about, you know, they're calling, analysts are talking about the retail apocalypse, and stores are going bankrupt, and so on and so forth. But the reality is that the overwhelming majority of commerce is still happening in the physical world, and that is true of retail. It's even more true of service businesses. So what we've got is a paradigm where digital media increasingly influence offline behavior.
That's pretty incredible, Greg. It seems like even with how tech savvy we've become today, there's really still no replacement for that face-to-face contact.
Right, and I think that customer service, whether it be in the form of in-store interaction or online, is really important as an adjunct to that. So go to the next slide, please. And this is what I just said. Essentially, as a kind of crude generalization, consumers are researching online and buying offline. And this slide stands for the proposition that ratings and reviews have a tremendous influence on offline purchase behavior. Next slide, please. So consistent with everything that I've already said, what we've got, and you all know this based on your own purchase behavior. So business owners and marketers are consumers, and you know just from reflecting on the way that you look up products and the way that you do research prior to making a purchase, that it's a zigzag or very convoluted nonlinear path. You know, there's the sort of conceit of the marketing funnel: awareness, consideration, and conversion, and that never really existed, and it especially doesn't exist today. Consumers are using a lot of different sources, and depending on the category, anywhere from 3 to more than 10, and there are various studies that support this idea.
That's really a lot of different sources that a small business has to stay on top of. How does any small business manage to stay on top of all these different options that a consumer might use to find them?
Well, the short answer is that they don't. Well, it's true of national brands, and it's true of local businesses. Everybody is sort of scrambling to keep up with consumer behavior, and at best, the best case scenario is an imperfection, right? People have to manage so many different things that they just have to reconcile themselves to doing the best job they can under the circumstances. And really what we're trying for is to do a better version of what you're doing today, not a perfect version, because that's just not. Consumers will give you the benefit of the doubt if you do things with sincerity and relatively well. Nobody expects perfection. Next slide, please. So back to the sort of original question. With all these different destinations, Google and Yelp and directories and Facebook and Twitter and vertical sites and so on and so forth, do you still need a website today? And obviously we wouldn't be doing this webinar if the answer were yes, so let's go on to the next slide. This is a quote that you hear a fair amount, and Facebook actually promotes this idea. I don't need a website because I have a Facebook page. Everybody's on Facebook. That my business page is going to be sufficient. That's got all the necessary information. Well, you have a Facebook presence that's fully built out, but it really isn't a substitute for your website. Next slide. And the metaphor that I'm using here is kind of being an owner versus being a renter. So when you're relying on a third party, however luxurious that may seem, or effective that may seem, you still don't have total control over the look and feel or the content of that page or that destination. And there are, everybody knows on this call that there have been changes that big destination sites have made, or Google has made, that impact people in a material way. So you really want to have your own website as a foundational element, and then these other destinations kind of amplify that content or link back to your website. Next slide, please. So as an illustration of that, this is LSA data that tracks local consumer behavior and sort of tries to determine what sources they're using to make local business decisions and purchase decisions. And what we see, and each study is going to show something slightly different, but they're pretty consistent. What we see is that company websites are very, very heavily used, in addition to a range of other media. So I would not have predicted this outcome, as recently as a year ago. I would not have said websites are going to rank second to search engines. I would have assumed they're going to be much further down. Now, part of the explanation for this may be search engines themselves. They're driving people to websites. But still, websites play this very critical role in the purchase path. Next slide, please. So we're seeing a kind of a different version of that previous slide. This is sort of the flip side of that. This is research that LSA and NYP did together. It's pretty interesting. We're just showing you a slice of it, and Aaron will have some more discussion of it. What are the reasons why consumers might not consider a business? And among the things that are identified, the absence of a website is a factor here. So if there is no website, almost a third of this population is going to say, I'm not even going to consider this business, and why that might be later on. But people rely on the rich data and the rich information on websites to help them make decisions. Next slide. So consistent with what a consumer will find a business on Facebook, on a search engine, on a directory, and what then they want to do is they want to sort of go or ratings and review site, and then they want to get more information. They want to see menus, they want to see product lists, they want to see other data, images. They want to learn more about the business's history. They want to see testimonials. And so this stat here reflects a very common pattern. So after reading positive reviews, consumers will click through and get more detail and more depth on the business website. So we can go on to the next slide. This data comes from Google, and it's similar to other studies that we've already cited. It's what are you doing, where are you going before you make a purchase in a store or offline? And in this particular study, we see websites, and this is in a retail context in particular, we see websites ranking higher even than search engine usage, which is really remarkable. So people are doing all kinds of things. They're going to stores, they're going to mapping sites, going to product search sites, they're looking at photos and so on. But visiting the website emerged as the thing that more people did than anything else. Next slide, please. And so this is my final slide, I believe, here. Is that correct, Erin? I think it is.
It sure is.
Before we turn it up. Okay, all right. So basically, everybody wants to have a better, more professional-looking website. Most people on this call have websites of one sort or another. Maybe a few don't. But what we find consistently in talking to businesses is that they want a better website, or they'd like to invest more in their website. So I think that's a universal impulse. Now, there's a threshold of sort of adequate good that you cross, and then you're talking about making improvements. But if you fall below a certain the website is not mobile ready, it doesn't deliver against consumer expectations, that can really hurt things. And it will potentially turn you over to turn the consumer look for a competitor. So, this is what we're now going to get into with Erin taking over now. She's going to talk about the elements that really make for an effective website. So, Erin, with that, I'll turn it over to you, and then we'll have time for questions at the end.
Thanks so much, Greg. So, as you see here, it's pretty incredible to see how much a bad mobile experience can turn away a potential customer. So, it's a great segue to our discussion of the importance of having a mobile-friendly website. So I probably don't need to tell you that most Americans have smartphones. You can't without seeing someone with their head buried in a device, and this means smartphones have become the medium of choice for conducting most of our day-to-day online needs. In fact, the number of searches conducted on mobile devices surpassed those conducted on a desktop for the first time in 2015, and that trend's just continuing. It's not turning around. So this means that a consumer that's searching for your services is more likely to be conducting that search on a mobile device than they are on a desktop. Even so, somehow, 23% of businesses still have websites that are not mobile friendly. So you can see pretty easily that having a mobile friendly website is going to give you a real competitive advantage against these guys. So that seems like reason enough to invest in having a mobile friendly site, but there's even more. Search engines give priority in their rankings to sites that are mobile friendly. So if your site is mobile friendly, you get search results. So that means more traffic and more conversions. In case you aren't sure what mobile friendly means, it essentially just means that your site is responsive and it'll adapt and look great no matter what device someone's reading it from. If you're not sure if your site is mobile friendly, don't worry. Google's made it really easy to check. So all you need to do is you can grab the link from the bottom of this page, enter your URL there, and you'll be, within seconds, it's going to give you results that will let you see if your site is mobile friendly or not. And it's even going to actually show you what your site looks like on a mobile device. So I'd highly recommend you quickly and see how your device is looking to those businesses that are searching on a mobile device and see if you can make an improvement there. So the next thing that you're going to want to consider when it comes to your website is your content. Rich content is going to make your site compelling and interesting to potential customers, but that also helps to improve your search engine rankings. The content can be anything from pictures and videos to a blog, testimonial, basically anything that helps to show the customer who you are and helps to build a connection. Good content really does humanize your business. It helps consumers to see that they're actually working with real people. An important piece of content to consider is testimonials or reviews. As you saw from the study results that Greg shared just recently, 20% of consumers won't consider purchasing from a business without ratings or reviews. They really want to know from other consumers like themselves that you're a reputable business that's worth doing business with. So if this seems like a lot to manage from a content perspective, you can start slow. The visual stuff is really a great place to start. So images and videos are always compelling, and they're especially going to be important if you're going after millennials as your target consumer. So now that you have great content, let's talk about making your website beautiful. You want to make sure that your website looks great and is really easy to navigate. So there are several design elements that you need to consider here. For one, white space. You want to make sure you don't pack in so much content that a visitor gets lost. Leave some white space. Make sure that the call to action is really obvious. What action do you want your visitor to take? Do you want them to call you? Are you hoping that they'll fill out a form to get more information? Do you want them to book an appointment? Whatever this is, make it really clear and super easy to find. In this example, you'll see highlighted areas, you'll see a phone number, really easy to find on the page. This makes it easy for a consumer's eye to be drawn directly to that call to action so that they take the action you want them to take. And then make sure your contact information is easy to find. You want to make it as simple as possible for a visitor to get in touch with you and become your customer. Now that we've covered the elements to make sure you have a great website, let's talk about some key things that will help to get your site ranked high when consumers search online. So the first thing that we recommend is that you start a blog and update it regularly. Search engines want to see that your content is updated regularly and that it's not stale. And a blog is probably one of the easiest ways you can do this. Make sure the topics that you're blogging about are of interest to the type of customer you want to attract and that they establish your expertise. It's a really great place for you to be earning trust with customers. You can update it as often as you like, but really try to update and add a new post at least once every other month. We want to make sure that customers see that you're paying attention to the site and keeping that content fresh. Next, brush up on your keyword strategy. So Google is always updating its algorithms to be smarter, which means that they can actually sense spammy link building processes. So you're going to want to make sure that your keyword strategy is up to snuff. There is a lot that goes into managing this, a lot to stay on top of, and it absolutely can be. So this is one of those areas that you may want to invest in looking for a partner to work with, and we'll continue to talk more about that. Make your online presence a priority. So you've seen from some of Greg's material that consumers search in a lot of different places to find information on local businesses. So you've got to make sure that they can find you wherever it is they happen to look, and you want to make sure your information is listed consistently across all those places. Luckily, there are some great free scanners out there that will actually review and make sure your information is consistent across all the sites that you want to be listed on. And finally, it's really important to avoid some of the major negative ranking factors. Some of them are as simple as making sure that your business information is correct and is listed in the right places, and it's a pretty easy one to fix. So make sure your business info and operating hours are listed and that they're accurate. Other tactics that search engines might see as spammy are generally a bad idea. So we're going to want to make sure to look out for all of those kinds of things when looking at your keyword strategy. So again, may seem like a lot to manage, and it is, but a lot of small businesses actually ought to work with a partner to ensure that their SEO strategy is up to par. So we're going to go ahead and review a few factors that you should consider when looking for a website partner. The first thing you'll want to do is make sure the potential partner understands your needs. It's great to have someone who actually knows your category and works with other businesses like yours so that they actually know what you need. You can ask for a portfolio. See what kinds of work that they do, and especially the kind of work that they've done for a business similar to your own. That'll give you some comfort and ease of mind to know that they're doing some really good things for businesses like yours. Talk about the SEO tactics they use. What type of tactics are they using? Do they sound like they're all really legitimate to you and are going to work really well with Google, for instance? Do they have the resources to stay on top of all these updates and algorithms that happen all the time? So you're going to want to make sure that any partner can do that for you. Ask about mobile responsive design. We talked about how important it is to have a mobile responsive website. So make sure that any partner you work with completely supports having a mobile responsive design. Ask for design without Flash. So for a while back in the day, Flash was really popular on a lot of websites, but it's definitely gone out of style. It's an out-of-date practice. It's something you're probably going to want to avoid and can hurt a lot of different factors with your website. And then finally, trust your instincts. Once you meet with and chat with a potential partner, you'll have a lot of feelings about how well they might work with you and if it's a good partner to be managing your search engine optimization in your website. So make sure to keep on top of that. All right, so with that said, I'm going to go ahead and hand this back over to Becky, who's going to talk a little bit about some resources that you'll have after the webinar today.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Erin. Okay, so just really briefly before we get to the Q&A, I wanted to mention the What Makes a Great Website report, which is kind of what we based this webinar off of. So you can download this report for free on MarketingBitz.com, and we will be distributing a link to download the report tomorrow, the email, which will also have a recording of the webinar. So for those of you who have been emailing me, or not emailing me, but putting in questions like, oh, I missed the link, what is the link, and freaking out about that, don't worry, you're going to tomorrow, so you can look up anything that you might have missed today. This report also includes a lot of really awesome more website development tips. So anything that we didn't cover today that you might have a question on, you can probably find the answer to in this guide. So again, you'll get that link tomorrow in the recap email. But now it's going to be time for Q&A, and we're getting a lot of questions in here. So thank you, first of all, for everyone who is asking questions. And for those of you who haven't asked a question yet, again, you can post it in the panel on the right side. So Greg and Erin, let's get started with this question, which came in. The question is, does blogging once a week increase my Google ranking greatly versus blogging once a month? So it's probably more about the cadence of posting content, or how often you would recommend posting content.
Oh, sorry, Greg, go for it.
No, you go ahead, Erin.
All right, if you have anything to add after, please do jump in. I was just going to say that when it comes to matters that specific, it's unfortunately pretty tough to track exactly what one little action like that impacts as far as your ranking, because most of the time when we're taking on a lot of different SEO tactics, we're doing a bunch, so it's hard to really see what one tactic does with ranking versus all of the others. That said, generally with updating content, the more frequently you do it, the better. So, and that's even from more than just search engine optimization. Blogging also just makes your site more, gives a greater chance that your customers will convert, or that just that they'll keep coming back. So I would generally recommend that the more often that you can update your blog, the better. It's always going to be great. But generally, we're saying that something around the lines of monthly is probably going to be the best practice standard, just to make sure that it's, you've got regular new content going on your blog. So if you can do it weekly, that's even better.
I would say with blogging, there's two caveats. One is you really have to like to write, or you have to have people in your organization who are interested in writing. And I agree that it needs to be done on a regular basis. But quality is more important than quantity. I mean, at some point, if you're doing once every, it's not going to be enough. But it's better to write one great, really interesting, useful blog post a month than it is to write perfunctory or garbage blog posts every day or every week, because ultimately you're speaking to a human, and that human is going to respond or not respond or get information from your blog post. Ultimately, you are trying to talk to your customers and prospects, so quality matters rather than just getting something out there every day or every week. But if you enjoy writing, and if you have a lot to say, by all means, write more frequently, and you'll be generally rewarded by the search engines.
That's a great point. I totally agree.
Awesome. So another question that we have is kind of about, how many different presences or how many links should you have online? Because someone was asking, is it a good idea to have a separate blog other than the one that's on your website, so probably backlinking to your website, or are there advantages to blogging on multiple sites like medium.com and things like that? So what's your guys' opinion of having multiple presences that backlink to your website?
I'll go ahead and jump in here too. So that's a great question. What I would generally say is that I would have your primary blog live on your website. That tends to be the best place because your website is your central hub for a lot of the information that customers are going to look for you online, and that blog helps to keep the content fresh. But that said, blogging other places can be really valuable too. When we look at a lot of our best practices for search engine optimization, there's a thing that we look at. We look at some of our off-site tactics too, and guest blogging is a huge one. So the great thing about that is if you're actually able to blog other places as well, that means that you get some really high-quality links back to your website, which make Google see it as more trusted. So I would say keep your primary blog on your website, but if you get the chance to blog other places, Medium's a great one, but there's plenty of others too, then that's going to be even more beneficial to your search engine rankings.
Okay. Anything to add, Greg?
Yeah, if you're really interested in sort of the technical SEO stuff, which to some esoteric areas, but if you're interested in looking at the relative importance of links versus citations versus other things, there's a great resource, the Local Ranking Factors study that's done every year. It's now owned by Moz. You can search on that and find a very extensive discussion of all this stuff. Links are very important. That would be all that I would say right now. But if that's something that you really want to dive into very deeply, that's a great resource, Local Search Ranking Factors.
Okay, good point, because I'm also getting some questions about more technical things, like somebody asked a question about, and I'm not a web guru, so I don't necessarily know what this means, but someone said, is schema structured data an essential factor for my ranking? Does it affect that kind of stuff? So if you guys have any recommended tools maybe where you can check for relevant keywords or any links to SEO articles or different ways to read up on that, that might be appreciated in the follow-up email as well. Unless you guys can think of any tools off the top of your mind that where people can check for relevant keywords or things like that.
We'll include a roundup of some tools that people can use if they want to in the outbound email, rather than sort of going down a list. Unless, Aaron, you have some favorite one that you want to mention right now.
Nothing top of mind. I think that sending those out in an email is probably the best bet.
I mean, the tool that Aaron showed with the Google mobile-friendly site tool is a great one. That's not the question exactly, but we'll do a roundup. But one thing on schema, which gets a little bit technical, yes, schema structured markup is something that you definitely want to do, and it's become more and more important in Google search results and in the future of virtual assistants, Alexa devices, Google Home. So the answer to the question is yes, you want to do it for sure, and you may need to consult with a partner, as Aaron has talked about, to get some more professional input and help on that.
Awesome. Okay, so kind of switching gears here from talking about SEO, someone has a question about social media. So they have a question about how often should I be posting on social media without being obnoxious? And then, how does your social media presence sort of affect or what are some good ways to, link people from your social media to your website, and how does that kind of affect your web presence as a whole? I know it's kind of a big question, but let's start with how often should people be posting and that sort of thing?
Do you want me to take that, Aaron, or do you want to respond?
Well, I'll give my opinion, but then I'll have you jump in too. So it sounds like, yeah, there's a lot of pieces to that question. I think that, honestly, the best answer to this, how often should I be posting on social media, goes back to kind of what Greg mentioned about blogging. you want to make sure that you're being consistent with it so it doesn't look like you have an abandoned social media profile, but at the same time, it is really a quality over quantity thing. So if you decide to go on Twitter and you're tweeting every hour about what you had for lunch, that's really not going to be very compelling, and it's not going to keep people engaged in your business. But if you have some really good, interesting things to share, then that's going to have a much greater impact. So depending on the social media platform, the timing that's recommended varies, and if Greg might know a little more of the detail behind that, so I can let him jump in if he wants to. But the other thing I would say on social media here too is as far as linking back to your website, one of the great things is if you blog on your website, then that gives you a great thing to post on social media about and link back to. So if you have a great new blog post up, then you can put a social media post out saying, hey, I just updated a post about some really interesting research that I've completed, and I recommend you go check it out here on my website. So that's a really great excuse to be pointing your social media back to your website.
So I don't have a stat for you. I think there's a rule of thumb about frequency that's sort of weekly, average everything out. I would have to look that up. But I would echo Aaron. You really have to think about the human being on the other end of this, right? So people get into this sort of mindset where they want to they're following some list of things that they need to be doing. But you need to sort of think of that as a means to an end. What is the end? You're talking to your customers, you're talking to your would-be customers, and you really have to look at the world from their perspective. And so you want to present content that's interesting, that's useful, that helps them, that's entertaining if that's appropriate, and that always has to be kept in mind. So rather than just doing something for the sake of doing it, oh, it's time for me to put up that social media post, you need to think, well, is this going to be interesting to people? And you want to engage. I mean, social media is a conversational medium, so you really want to take cues from your audience. What are they interested in? Talk to them. So it's going to be sort of, it's going to be contingent on your business. It's going to be contingent to some degree on the type of, the category. People may want to hear more from certain kinds of, restaurants or bars or entertainment venues than they do, people who are plumbers. But if you're a very entertaining plumber that has lots of great anecdotes and great images and stuff like that, people would be probably happy to receive your post. So it really is dependent upon the kind of tone you set and the kind of personality you develop for your business. But you want to do regular posts, and as Aaron points out, if you're doing a blog or you have other content, you can post that on social media too. Take advantage of content from other sources and repost that. But make sure it's always useful and interesting and not just some thing that you're doing because, oh, it's Tuesday and it's time for me to, do my social media post.
Okay. We're getting a lot of good questions here. Again, I just want to encourage everyone, if you have any other things that you've thought of, feel free to put them in the panel on the right side of your screen. But one question that we have here, a good question. So this small business has multiple offices in different cities. So probably not that small, but we have multiple offices in different cities. Should we set up websites for each city/office, or should we incorporate them as a page under one major website? So does that make sense to you guys? That's the question.
I don't know, Aaron, if you have it. This is a perennial SEO question. I mean, this is a question that's been asked a bazillion times. And unfortunately, people always mistake me for an SEO practitioner, and I am not. I am not a person who's under the hood doing SEO for people. There is an answer. There is a sort of consensus recommendation, and we can try and address that. I mean, and Aaron, unless you have an answer off the top of your head, we can try and address that question in a blog post on MarketingBitz maybe next week or in the material that we send out. I believe, there are probably two ways to do it, but there's going to be a recommended way, and I suspect it's. Well, I don't want to say. I was going to say I suspect it's creating websites for each. Yeah, I don't want to say it. I'm sorry. We'll get an answer. I just don't want to have the wrong advice. So we'll get an answer, and we'll put it on the we'll do a MarketingBitz blog post. But Erin, go ahead if you have anything to add.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the right way to handle this. I think we want to. It is a somewhat complex question, so I think that's why it'll be good to do that follow up. I don't think that there's one correct answer. It depends on a lot of factors. So that's kind of what we'll have to dig into a little bit there. So it is from a exclusively a website perspective. A lot of people, and it goes a simple route of just having one website, but it can be challenging to manage the search engine optimization in multiple different locations if you've only got the one site. So there's a lot of different factors to take into consideration. So I think we'll want to dive deeper to really give a good answer on that one.
So one final thing to say on that. So follow the MarketingBitz on Twitter. So follow MarketingBitz on Twitter, and I'll post an answer to that later today, and then we'll expand it into a blog post. Go ahead. Sorry, Becky.
Right. So that's MarketingBitz. You can see the title actually is on the bottom of the screen, but it's marketing and then Bitz, B-I-T-Z, and our Twitter handle is the same as our name. So actually, Erin, I was going to ask you if you could proceed to the next slide too, please, the last slide of the webinar. This slide has our email on it at marketingbitz.com. Yeah, right there. So I want to encourage people too, if you have other, really more specific SEO questions or questions specific to your business, I want to encourage you to follow up with an email with us as well. That way we'll be able to make sure that we don't miss anybody's questions. And also, since we do have such a large variety of questions on the webinar today, we might not be able to answer each individual question. So we will be I will send a spreadsheet of these to the personal follow-up after the call. So if we didn't get to your question, don't worry about it. But I do have one question here that's also a little bit more specific to this person's business, but I thought that we might be able to address it since we are a trade association as well, Greg. So this question might be more for you. But this person says they're a trade association and then in the process of redesigning their website. So they're wondering how important is it to have a members-only section on the site. So I don't know if that's something, I mean, it's pretty specific to their business, but if that's something that you could touch on at all, Greg.
Well, I think that's not an SEO question. That's a sort of a business model question. I mean, if you're offering content or offering services that are exclusive to your membership or as an incentive to gain new members, then you definitely do want to have a members only or password protected area of your site, because that's sort of the benefit of being a member. It's not going to get you anything in terms of ranking. But it's really about your business, the nature of your business and your business model more than it is an SEO or a ranking question. But by the same token, if you do have that members only section, that needs to deliver value and be easy to use, right? So that's something that requires conversation with your audience and some testing. I mean, we can have a discussion offline if you want about that, but that's my sort of quick answer.
Sure. Okay, and I got another good question that, Erin, you could probably touch on, but this person's asking, when you're talking about brushing up on your keyword strategy, which you mentioned that people should do every once in a while, they're wondering how often this kind of practice needs to take place.
That's a little bit of a tough question because there's not like a particular cadence at which you need to update. As I mentioned, Google specifically tends to update their algorithms all the time. There are times when they might make little tweaks every day. So it is a pretty regular practice, and that's why I talked a lot about working with a partner on that one, because if you really want to stay on top of all the changes and updates going on with search engine algorithms, it's pretty much a full-time job for somebody to do that, and a lot of business owners just don't have the time to stay on top of it to that degree. So, I mean, if you're doing this yourself and you want to do the best that you can as a business owner without a partner, you'll probably, I would say, set aside some time, at least monthly, to kind of do some checks and some research on the latest. But you're probably going to want to stay and do more than just that. It's not going to just be digging around and researching. It might be attending conferences that allow you to learn a little bit more about what's going on with search engine algorithms. Again, it's a lot to take on for a business owner. So, that's probably one of the biggest areas where I recommend working with a partner.
Okay. All right, so I had a couple of questions in here regarding video on your website, because that was kind of a recommended sort of type of content that obviously people are really receptive to. So this person's asking, I don't really know how you can answer this question, but how essential is it to have a video on your landing homepage in a follow-up announcement or something like that, they said. So I guess if you can just talk on this in general, maybe if you've seen that it's more successful than any other kind of content, something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's too bad. I actually have some statistics on this, and they just aren't in front of me at the moment. So maybe if I shoot them over, we can you guys can tweet those out today too. But I've actually got some really good.
Sorry, I was going to say you'll get the name of the person who asked the question as well, so you can always do a personal follow-up as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah. But I think it would be helpful for a lot of people. But there's actually some really great statistics we have about how much more likely to buy consumers become when you have video on your website. So it's actually huge. It makes a big difference to have video on your website. It's actually, when I first saw some of these statistics, it was almost surprising to me how big of a deal it is. But video can be a number of different things. Like people do all kinds of videos. It might be something, we've seen people that do something that might be like a video that's like a virtual tour of their business, which is awesome if you have the type of business that people actually want to see and like get a little bit of a look around before they come visit you in person. Or it could be something like just an interview with the business owner or member of the staff, or even a video testimonial of a customer, or even something as simple that's just like a slideshow of photos of your business. But it really is highly engaging, so it makes a huge difference. And there's so many different ways that you can incorporate video into your site. But I'll make sure to get some of those actual statistics out because I think that'll be helpful.
To the pop-up, to the pop-up aspect of the question, no pop-ups. Do not use interstitials.
Oh yeah.
Do not throw roadblocks in front of people. I mean, arguably this would be content that they'd be interested in, but I mean, I echo Erin. Video is powerful. It gives it renders on mobile devices. You can put it into YouTube, which gives you an SEO another SEO boost because YouTube sites are YouTube videos indexed. So the short answer is yes, but again, I'm sounding like a broken record. Think about the content from the perspective of your customer. You know, what do they need to know? What do they need to understand? What would help them make a decision? You know, don't make it exclusively a commercial for your business. Make it educational. Make it informative. Certainly promote yourself, but do it in a softer way. Don't you know? If you've been injured in an accident, call 800 broken leg now. I mean, that kind of stuff is not going to be effective. So, but there's a much longer discussion about content that we can't have right now.
Sure. Okay, so switching gears a little bit too, because I've gotten a couple of questions here about people who sound like they're thinking about, finding a partner to kind of do their website for them or things like that. So someone's asking, and this kind of touches on the last slide that you had, Erin, but someone's asking, what's the best way to identify a web partner who's competent in your industry? So what are some things that these people should be looking for? What are some questions maybe that they should ask potential partners that would indicate that they might be a good fit?
Well, there's a few ways to do this, and it's a good question because there are so many out there that people can choose from. So generally what I would recommend is do the same kind of research that your consumers are doing when they're coming to you. There's a lot of information you can find online first. And so a lot of businesses that offer website services will provide, even on their website, examples of the types of businesses that they work with. That's a great place to start if you want to do something simple. But even beyond that, once you have a chance to chat with somebody at that business, ask for examples. So that's where we mentioned asking for a portfolio. So the most helpful thing you can see is examples of work they've done for other businesses in your category. If they don't have anything in your category, then you might not have somebody that's quite as experienced. But if you happen to be in a category that's super niche and there's something that's similar enough that you think would give you a really good idea of what they could do for you, that can work as well. So, just see what kind of work that they've got that can speak to the kind of business that you've got going on and see if it looks like something that you're aiming for. It's probably some of the best ways to evaluate.
Okay, so we have a question about web design here. So on the design side, it appears that many companies are now using the scrolling website. Lots the primary visual, scroll down and more minimal. Do you feel that this is more of a trendy design thing, or are we moving in this manner because of the need to be mobile accessible?
I'm actually going to see if Greg's got a good answer to that one.
Well, so I think that web design definitely follows fashion. It's sort of like fashion. Designers sort of get people get interested in certain kinds of aesthetics and certain kinds of functionality, and so you see a lot of things happening sort of at the same time. But mobile is definitely driving web design and sort of mobile utility, and that's the primary consideration. So most email is opened on mobile devices. Most people are going to see your site on a mobile device. Again, think about your own experiences. And so, yes, that people are willing to scroll on mobile devices in ways that they don't scroll on the desktop. So I would say that that's a good instinct that's what's driving a lot of the scrolling designs. But you don't have to conform to that. Do something different. It really should be suited to your content and your information. But minimalism, white space, as Erin pointed out, is advisable as a general matter because people are, clutter, dense text does not work on the small screen as well. So you want to have a balance between enough content and, the right content, but not have it be so dense and so cluttered that people are unable to read it, or it just takes too much effort.
Yeah, and I just echo some of that. I think that the most important thing to consider with website design is that it's easy to navigate at the end of the day. It's simple for a customer to get around your website and find what they need, then you've got good design.
So final comment on that point, because you stimulated something, Erin. What's remarkable, so what people, the fundamental things that people are looking for from a local business in most cases, I mean, this is a generalization. They're looking for hours of operation. They're looking for contact details. They're looking for location information, right? These are things that people are so basic and so simple, but yet sometimes they get left out. Often the phone number is hard to find, to Erin's point about navigation. Often the hours are hard to find. And, you need to really put basic information that people want front and center and make it easy to access and make it easy to find other information, to Erin's point about navigation. These are simple things, but they often get overlooked. And if you have a designer who's too sort of rococo and flourishy, that may defeat the utility of the site, right? You want something professional and polished, but you want something that isn't too cute or too hipstery, You want something that's just very utilitarian and effective.
Okay, so another thing I was thinking about while you guys were talking about that is that I'm getting a couple questions that I think some people are a little bit confused about, like how when you search for somebody's business online, their Google My Business search results will pop up, which has their phone number or their business information or stuff like that, and it's not always connected to a website. So I think some people are confusing that for like their primary, how people find them online. So can one of you just talk briefly on how you need to claim your Google My Business profile and sort of what that is and how you can link that back to your website so that even if your business profile on Google shows up, ahead of your actual website, you can still send that traffic. Does that make sense?
Yes. Erin, do you want to take that or do you want me to take that?
You go ahead.
So you absolutely need to claim your listing on Google My Business. This is one of the fundamental things that you must do. And so you just search for Google My Business and then verify your business listing and put in the additional information. So that's going to give Google information to show to searchers potentially in the knowledge panel, which is the right-hand side, and otherwise on mapping sites and so on. And then you put in your URL as an additional piece of information, and they'll link to you, and that's available to your Google My Business profile. But it's a distinct thing from your website. They're not automatically going to take that content from your website and populate a Google My Business profile I mean, they'll have your content from crawling your website, but it's better if you claim the listing and make sure the information is correct. That's going to help you. But it's a complement to your website, not a substitution or a replacement for it.
And one thing I'll just add on that too, because I do hear questions like that all the time. And generally what we say is that if a consumer is searching for a business like yours, the more times that you can show up on the first page, the better. So just imagine how great it'll be if not only are you showing up on the first page of results in your Google My Business results, but your website's showing up there as well. So that's where it becomes so important to engage in all these search engine optimization tactics in addition to managing your presence across multiple different platforms. Because if you really do a good job of this, then you're going to be popping up all over the place, which only adds to the trust factor for your potential customers. So it's only good stuff if you can be showing up all over the place.
So to piggyback on that for 1 second, you need a website. That's what we're talking about today, and you need to have your business details correct in the places that people are going to look for your business, and often those are going to rank ahead of your website. So various directory sites or vertical sites, ratings and review sites, those can outrank you, and you're going to want to cleanse the data on each of those sites. So what you should do is follow the path. I think Aaron referenced this earlier. Follow the path that a consumer would potentially follow to find your business. So if you're a florist, dozen roses or spring bouquet or whatever the keywords are, or if you're a doctor or a vet or a plumber, do the kind of search, or have a friend or family member sort of do the kind of search that they would do to find a business like yours, and see the sites that show up. And those are the places where you need to make sure that your business information is correct, and where you, in some of these cases, you claim and verify your listing so you have control over it. This is part of a much longer discussion that Aaron and YP can talk to you about, or that other SEO folks can talk to you about. But it's important to be in all those places, and a good way to figure that out is to just do basic searches as if you were a customer or a hypothetical customer for your business, and see what's ranking.
And that's where that presence scan that I mentioned comes in really easy. You can do it manually like that, but finding a free presence scanner is going to allow you to do it really quickly and simply. It'll kind of show you, hey, here's all the places you're showing up, and it'll let you know if your information's inconsistent anywhere. So I honestly think that's probably one of the first steps you want to take to make sure you're kind of starting to get things in order.
Okay. All right, we have time for probably 2 more questions. So one of the questions is, how important is it to make your website interactive, as to be able to schedule appointments or chat with someone on the website?
It's really valuable to be able to have interactive elements to your website like that, because we always say that it's not necessarily going to be a factor in search engine rankings, but it's a huge factor in conversion. So as great as it is to get your website to rank really highly and get people to find you, your end goal is really to get those visitors to become customers. So the best things you can do to get a visitor to become a customer are to keep your website compelling, engaging, and interactive. So it's a combination of that updated content that you keep there regularly that has stuff that's really interesting and useful for your prospective customers, but also allowing them to easily engage with you. And there's a lot of different ways that businesses do that, depending on what's the way you most want someone to engage with you. So to some, that really might just be keeping your phone number really easy to find and getting people to call you and being readily available to take their phone calls. For others, it might be having an appointment booker on your website so somebody can easily just click there and say, yep, I'd like an appointment. Different consumers behave in different ways, so if you have a couple of options, sometimes that'll increase the ways. For instance, from my personal experience, I went to make an appointment with a new dentist recently, and it was helpful to have an option of, hey, here's their phone number, and I could give them a call, or I can go ahead and just click on this button and send fill out the times that I'd like to have my appointment at, and have someone get back to me when it's good for them and good for me. So it's nice to have a couple different options of how people can interact with you and be able to convert them to a customer.
I would say I would agree with Aaron's comments and say, yes, you really need to look into making, if you deal in appointments, you need to make booking available. That's a longer conversation about the how, Messaging was the other part of that question. Messaging is becoming more important, whether it's Facebook Messenger or messaging on your own website or on third-party sites. This is something that the more communication you can have, the less friction that exists in getting information to your customers, talking to your customers, the better. Having said that, you need to be prepared to respond to people. So if you have messaging and you're not responsive, this is true of email as well to a customer. Somebody says, hey, I need an appointment. Can I get one today at such and such a time? And you don't respond to them. Obviously, that's going to be bad. So better to have nothing than to create an expectation that they're going to get a response, especially in a messaging context, which implies a quicker response, and not be able to fulfill against that. And the same thing is true with booking. I had a bad experience with online booking with a optometrist that led me to believe that I could select an appointment time online, and that I would be getting some confirmation, and then they kept telling me, oh, that appointment isn't available, that appointment isn't available. So really, if you're going to do this stuff, you've got to make sure that it works. And that's all part of a longer conversation. But you must start investing or investigating at least in these technologies, because consumers are starting to use them and expect that they'll be able to use them with you.
Okay. So I don't want to end us too much past the hour because everybody else has a lot of other things to get on to. So I think I'll end with that. And everybody else, I know there were a lot of questions that we didn't have a chance to get to today. So like I said, we'll make sure to get to your questions and answer them individually. And then also keep an eye out for the email going out tomorrow, which has a recap of the recording of the webinar, as well as a link to download that report, which has a lot of these tips in it as well. So to just kind of conclude things, Greg and Erin, if I could ask you each for just one sort of the first thing that these people should do when they log off the webinar to begin improving their web presence. What's like the first essential step they should take?
Well, I would say that probably the simplest and easiest thing you could do to get started is to do a presence scan. It'll give you a good view of the health of your existing web presence today, and you can start to get some ideas where you need to start fixing other things. So that's probably the best and easiest first step you can take.
I would agree with that. If I could say that, I would say that, because that's a great way to get a sense of how you're sort of ranking and where you need to patch holes. After that, it's a bit tougher. I would say just start educating yourself with available resources, about all these topics. I mean, there's a lot of questions. Don't expect things to be perfect. Don't expect yourself to be perfect. Journey of 1,000 miles and all that, but start getting more educated. If you're in Atlanta, come to the boot camp, talk to YP, talk to us, talk to the other companies there in person, and just become more sophisticated about all this stuff. Engage people, engage your customers. You're trying to get them information so that they can make decisions. All these platforms are important, but just take it one step at a time, break down the complex tasks into simpler ones, and over time things will improve. Sorry, that wasn't very concise. Wonderful. But after Erin, that was the best. Okay. That would be the.
That's all right. All right, so I'm going to wrap things up, but thank you everybody for joining us on the webinar today. Thank you for listening. Keep an eye out for the recap email tomorrow. And if you have any other questions, feel free to email us at info@marketingbitz.com. Other than that, have a great day, everybody, and thanks again.